The rain had passed during the early hours, leaving the forest damp and glistening with drops of dew. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the high canopy, golden fingers brushing the thick ferns and mossy ground. Somewhere far off, a bird called lazily. It was a quiet morning, the kind Elias Marr had come to cherish. He crouched beside one of his handmade traps, a simple net strung between two trees, expecting perhaps a small game animal. But what he saw made him freeze. There, suspended in the net like some fragile, fallen star, was a girl. Not a human girl. Her skin shimmered blue-green, pearlescent and damp from the dew. Hair like river light flowed around her shoulders, tangled in the netting. Her eyes were enormous, glowing faintly with bioluminescence, and she stared at him in terror. Elias blinked, taking in her small form, her trembling limbs, and the way her long fingers gripped the netting as if it would protect her. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "Don't eat me." He blinked. "Eat you?" She nodded, too frightened to speak further. Elias raised both hands slowly, showing he held no weapon. "I don't eat people. I'm not a beast." She stared at him a moment longer before exhaling shakily, her grip loosening. Elias moved closer, carefully cutting away the ropes. She dropped lightly to the ground, wincing and favoring one leg. "You can speak English," he said quietly. "Some," she replied, keeping her distance. "Learned, from explorers." "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Laura. I am a Valari scout." He studied her. Her clothes were torn but looked advanced, a flexible bodysuit, dirty and torn along the arms. She wore a small metallic pendant around her neck, faintly glowing. "I'm Elias March. I live here. Alone." Laura's glowing eyes narrowed. "Why alone?" He sighed. "That's a long story. But this forest, it's quieter than the world I left." She nodded, as if understanding more than she let on. "You fell from the sky." "Ship crashed," she said softly. "We scout planets. Study them. My vessel malfunctioned. I fell here." Elias looked up through the trees. "Where?" "Near the river. Big rocks. Trees with yellow leaves." He nodded. "I know that place. A few hours west." They stood in silence. She swayed slightly, and he realized she hadn't eaten. "Come with me. I have food. Fire. You're safe." She hesitated, then gave a single nod. Elias's cabin was modest, a low-roofed shelter built from the forest itself, tucked beneath thick boughs and camouflaged by design. Laura followed him with cautious steps, eyes wide, noting every creak of wood and flutter of leaves. Inside, the air was warm. A small fire burned in a stone hearth. Elias handed her a canteen and a strip of dried meat. "Not human meat," he joked dryly. She stared at the food, then smiled, a faint but genuine curve of her lips. She ate slowly, savoring the taste. "Why do your people fear us so much?" Elias asked. Laura paused. "Stories. Humans hunt. Humans burn. We are told, never be caught." He shook his head. "Not all of us are like that. Some maybe, yes. But many just want peace." She studied his face. "You do not look like Hunter." He chuckled. "Used to be. Not anymore." They left early the next morning, the forest still wrapped in mist. Laura moved more easily, though she leaned on a walking stick Elias had carved for her. Her strength was returning. They reached the river by midday. The water roared over jagged stones, and beside it, half submerged in mud and vines, lay the twisted wreck of Laura's ship. Its hull was scorched, a panel torn open revealing sparking cables and blinking lights. Laura gasped and rushed forward. "Still alive," she murmured, placing a palm on the hull. Core is breathing. Elias watched as she examined the damage. Her hands moved quickly, flipping panels, scanning wires with a small handheld device. It can be fixed. She nodded slowly. Some parts. But not all. I need time. He dropped his pack. Then we'll make camp. That night, a fire crackled between them. The forest whispered around the edges of the camp, alive with unseen life. Laura sat cross-legged, staring into the flames. This fire, it's like magic, she said softly. No magic. Just survival. She touched a flame lightly and yelped. Then laughed. Careful, Elias said with a grin. Your world is strange. Yours too, I bet. She nodded. Our cities float. No forests. No fire like this. But stars, always stars. You miss your home. Yes. But now. I feel less afraid. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, quiet and warm. The following day, they scavenged for parts. Elias found an old beacon in his shed, a leftover from his military days. Maybe this can boost your signal. Laura accepted it, fingers brushing his. Her touch was cool and gentle. You help much, she said. You help me too. As evening fell, Laura suddenly stiffened. Her eyes glowed brighter. What is it? A sound. Engines. Elias tilted his head. Then he heard it too, a low thrumming from above, distant but moving fast. Your people. She nodded, fear in her eyes. They search. We need to hide. Come. He led her into a side ravine, toward an old cave he had once used during storms. As they entered the cool darkness, he lit a torch. Laura pressed close to him, trembling. They think I am taken. They will not listen. Then we make them listen, Elias said. And in the shadows, their vow was silently sealed, to protect each other, no matter what came next. The canopy of the forest towered like an emerald ceiling above them. The thick, veined leaves of the eldergrove trees filtered the sunlight into dapples of gold and green. Beneath this shifting light, Elias Mar moved with quiet purpose. Each step was measured, his boots finding soft moss instead of twigs. Behind him, the alien woman, Laura, moved with practiced grace, her red skin gleaming faintly in the dim light. Her white, gossamer cloak was now smudged with soil and flecks of ash. They had been fleeing for hours. Smoke from the crash still tainted the air, and the deepwood birds had fallen silent since morning. Elias knew the Valari patrol would come soon. Too soon. Laura stopped beside a crumbling rock wall half swallowed by creeping vines. Her eyes glowed faintly as she pressed a palm to the stone. With a soft hum, the vines curled away, revealing a narrow crevice. Here, she said. This path leads to an old ruin. We can hide there. They squeezed through the gap, brushing against ancient carvings etched into the stone. The ruin was buried, its roof collapsed, forming a natural cave surrounded by tree roots. Moss hung like curtains, and small blue mushrooms gave off a faint bioluminescent light. Once inside, Elias dropped his gear with a tired sigh. He pulled out his beacon core and examined the cracked panel. Laura knelt beside him, her elegant fingers brushing against his. She studied the damage. We might salvage a short-range pulse, she murmured. But we need a power source. Elias nodded. I left a microcore in the medkit. Hidden under the shuttle nose. We can retrieve it tonight. A sudden rustling from the foliage outside snapped their heads up. Elias drew his sidearm, while Laura silently reached for her curved blade. But instead of a Valari scout or a wandering beast, a small voice broke the stillness. Hello. A boy, maybe 10, with tangled black hair and bruised knees, stood just outside the cave. His shirt was ripped, his lips cracked. Elias stepped forward. Hey, it's all right. I'm not going to hurt you. What's your name? The boy looked between Elias and the tall, red-skinned alien woman behind him. His eyes widened, but he didn't run. Keen, he said softly. I got lost. My uncle, he was taking me to the Edgelands, but we were attacked. I ran. Laura exchanged a glance with Elias. Her expression was unreadable. Come inside, Elias said gently. We'll keep you safe. Keen clung to a strip of cloth wrapped around Elias's wrist as they boiled water over a tiny fire built with careful smoke control. Laura sat cross-legged nearby, her red fingers weaving a patch for Elias's damaged cloak from moss fiber and broken vines. She glanced at Keen, then back at Elias. This complicates our movements. He's just a kid, Elias replied. I won't abandon him. Laura nodded slowly. Nor will I. But it means we must be more careful. By nightfall, the ruined cave had become a fragile sanctuary. Keen slept curled beside the fire, his head on Elias's jacket. Laura worked silently on repairing a broken comms plate. The crystalline material shimmered faintly in the firelight. Elias approached her, crouching nearby. I didn't think I'd ever have to protect someone again. She glanced up. You were a soldier. He nodded. Too long. But this feels different. Feels right. Laura hesitated. Her gaze drifted to Keen. Where I come from, children like him are trained early. Prepared to fight, to protect our territory. But he just wants to live. That's all anyone wants. The night deepened. Outside, the hoots of sky owls echoed among the trees. Laura's gaze lingered on Elias. In the glow of the blue mushrooms and firelight, his face looked softer, younger. His hands, rough and scarred, were gently curled near Keen's blanket. The next morning, they ventured out together. Elias led them to the remains of the shuttle, moving in a wide arc to avoid scout drones. Smoke still hissed from the bent hull. The trees nearby were scorched, but in the underbrush, tiny flowers had already started blooming again. While Laura retrieved the microcore from the medkit, Elias scavenged scraps of power cable. Keen, surprisingly nimble, climbed the cracked nose cone to keep watch. Got it, Laura said, holding up the glowing crystal core. This will give us maybe 2 transmissions. We must be precise. Back at the cave, they assembled the signal node using salvaged wiring and a handheld console. Laura spoke as she worked. The Valari Council doesn't know I survived. I can send a message, to delay their search. If they think I'm injured but not captured, they'll hold off. Maybe even pull back. Will they believe you? Laura looked uncertain. They trust my word. For now. That night, under the old stone arches, they sent the pulse. The message, encoded and signed with Laura's command glyph, raced skyward through the trees in a whisper-thin beam. Laura's voice had trembled slightly as she recorded it. Requesting delay of search parties. I am alive. Injured. In hiding. Will make contact again when possible. Do not engage until confirmed. This is Counselor Laura Valkesh. When it was done, silence fell. Keen sat cross-legged beside the fire, fiddling with a broken stabilizer. He looked up. Are they coming for us? Elias didn't answer. Laura did. They might. But for now, we are together. And that gives us strength. Days passed in the forest. The ruin became more than a hiding place. They cleaned out the moldy corners, built hammocks from vines, and filtered fresh water from a nearby spring. Keen helped gather herbs and roots, and Laura taught him to listen for the breathing of the forest. One night, while Keen was asleep, Laura turned to Elias. I've sent another message. This one was different. Elias sat up, brows drawn. What kind of different? I told them the truth, she said. That I no longer believe in the path we were following. That perhaps peace is possible. His breath caught. Laura reached for his hand. I never thought I would say this to a human. But in this place, under these trees, something has changed. I see things differently. I see you differently. Their fingers entwined. The fire cracked softly. Outside, the forest held its breath. At dawn, Keen woke to find Laura teaching Elias how to trace ancient glyphs onto stone. He watched them, curiosity in his wide eyes, before slipping away to fetch more kindling. The family they had formed wasn't perfect, but it was real. Together, beneath the trees, they waited for whatever would come next. Peace, maybe. Or war. But for now, they had each other. And the forest watched, silent and eternal, as hope bloomed quietly in the ruins. The morning mist lay thick over the forest floor, swirling in ghostly ribbons through gnarled roots and underbrush. Sunlight filtered weakly through the thick canopy above, giving everything a greenish hue, like an ancient underwater world long forgotten by time. Elias crouched beside a tree with bark blackened by age and moss, his hands expertly twisting a length of wire between two branches. The trap was simple, effective, silent, and placed where only someone unfamiliar with the forest might stumble into it. Behind him, Laura watched with curious eyes, crouched low in her borrowed earth-toned cloak. Her skin, once radiant and polished in the city of her people, was now smudged with dirt and streaked with sap. But her eyes had changed most, where once they had brimmed with disdain and rigid order, now they flickered with something else. Observation. Adaptation. You tighten it too much, it'll snap under pressure, Elias muttered, mostly to himself, then turned and offered her a glance. Want to give it a try? Laura's nostrils flared. I would rather not snap any more bones today. He chuckled softly, then moved on to the next trap. They'd made their shelter among the fallen stones of a ruin long buried under vines and thyme. It wasn't a home, just a temporary nest carved out of desperation. But Elias made sure it was defensible. The Valari patrols were getting closer. He'd seen the shimmer of scanning drones skimming through the canopy 2 days ago. This time, it wouldn't be a lone scout. This time, they'd send someone who knew how to track. He could feel it in the air. Teach me, Laura said suddenly. Elias raised an eyebrow. Teach you what? To use this place. To live like this. You've walked this forest longer than I've walked my own halls. I want to understand how it breathes. The admission took him by surprise. But he didn't question it. Instead, he simply nodded. By afternoon, they were setting up snares and marking escape paths with tiny signs of bent twigs and carved bark only a practiced eye could spot. Laura listened and learned. She moved stiffly at first, but over the hours, her motions loosened. Her hands no longer trembled when handling raw thorns. Her boots pressed softer against the loam. When Elias looked back at her late in the day, she blended just a little more into the forest around her. That evening, as they sat by a fire buried deep in a hollow beneath a heavy canopy, Keen curled up beside them, fast asleep with his arms wrapped around a bundle of fur Elias had fashioned for him. The boy had stopped crying at night. That was something. Laura glanced toward the firelight flickering against Elias's face. Do you miss your people? He was silent for a long moment. I miss what we could have been. Not what we were. She nodded slowly, wrapping her cloak tighter. I know that kind of missing. The next day, the forest gave them its warning. A rustle too patterned to be an animal. The faint electrical tinge in the air, a sign of hovering tech. Elias pressed his back to a tree and held up a fist. Laura froze. Keen, taught well, hid under a moss-covered ledge behind them. Elias pointed to the west ridge. Laura whispered, they come in pairs. Not this time, Elias muttered. They've got a commander. She tensed. Talaris. Elias didn't ask how she knew. She said the name with the familiarity of someone who had once shared the same halls. They spent the next 2 hours preparing, not for a fight, but for a stall. Elias knew the patrol route would bring the Valari squad directly through one of their exit paths. But if they shifted the pressure plates, reworked the signal traps, and used the natural terrain to confuse, they might just draw them off course. And it worked. Mostly. The first trap triggered at dusk, a loud burst of smoke and light that mimicked a flaring beacon. Then another farther north. The patrol broke formation, scattering through the thick brush. Elias led Lura and Keen through the eastern path, beneath low-hanging branches and into a rock cleft hidden from above. But a voice called through the air. Elias, march. We know you are there. Elias stopped. His hand hovered over the knife strapped to his thigh. That voice, Lura whispered. It's him. They could run. But they'd be hunted. Or they could do something else. Keen, stay here, Elias said. Don't move until I come back. He stepped out of the trees, his arms visible but hands raised. Lura moved beside him, refusing to let him face it alone. From the other side of the glade stepped Commander Talaris, his armor a deep metallic gray pattern with streaks of forest camo. His face was sharper than Elias remembered, older, colder. But not cruel. You've been difficult to trace, Talaris said. Didn't want to be found. You were seen aiding a fugitive. She's not a fugitive, Elias said calmly. She's your sister. Talaris's jaw tightened. Behind him, 5 Valari soldiers remained still, weapons not raised but not lowered either. Why are you here, Elias? Because I'm trying to avoid war. You've seen what this planet has done to people. You've seen what happens when fear makes decisions. Talaris stepped forward. She was declared compromised. Her orders were to return or be marked as abandoned. And yet, Lura said, stepping forward, here I stand. Not abandoned. Not lost. I choose to stand here. With them. The commander looked between them. His face unreadable. You risk execution by defying the council. Lura lifted her chin. Then I'll speak to the council myself. Let them see the truth. Not through filtered reports, but with their own eyes. For the first time, Talaris's eyes softened, just a crack. He nodded slowly. Then come. But understand, I can only delay judgment. Not erase it. Elias nodded. That's more than we expected. That night, they did not flee. They camped with the patrol. Not as prisoners. Not yet. The Valari soldiers kept their distance, their eyes wary, uncertain what to make of this man and woman who spoke like kin but walked like ghosts. Lura sat beside Elias, gazing up at the stars barely visible through the branches. He listened. That matters. Some seeds only grow when the earth has cracked open, Elias murmured. She looked at him, her fingers brushing his. Do you think your people will ever trust mine? I think we have to show them how. The forest no longer felt like it was closing in. For the first time in weeks, it felt like it might be holding its breath. Waiting for something to bloom. Waiting for something to turn. Title, Council of Stars. The city shimmered like a dreamscape woven from moonlight and stardust. Floating towers spiraled into the sky, their spires tipped with glowing crystals that pulsed with soft, rhythmic light. Beneath them, bridges of pure energy arched from one platform to another, humming gently with every footstep that passed over them. The air held a floral sweetness, and even the gravity here seemed less oppressive, as if the city itself refused to bow to the weight of conflict. Elias Marr had never felt so alien in his life. Not when he was stationed off-world in the bitter dunes of Arctura 9, not when he wandered half-dead through the frost-stung wastes of New Terra 7. Here, in the luminous capital of the Valari people, he was a walking contradiction, scarred, earthy, clad in patched leathers and utility gear among beings of grace and light. Lura walked beside him. She wore ceremonial robes now, soft violet silks interwoven with threads that glimmered like veins of starfire. The markings along her azure skin had been repainted by temple artists, glowing faintly as she moved. She kept her head high, the curl of her black horn adorned with a silver clasp bearing her family's lost crest. She was radiant, no longer the wounded fugitive who had stumbled into Elias's life, but a proud daughter of the stars reclaiming her voice. Together, they approached the great archway that led into the council chamber. A line of Valari sentinels stood at attention. Their armor shimmered in iridescent hues, spears held vertical and unmoving, faces hidden behind reflective helms. As Elias and Lura drew near, the sentinels stepped aside in perfect synchrony. A soft chime resonated as the doors opened. Inside, the council chamber bloomed like the center of a massive flower, petals formed from radiant glass, arranged in spirals around a central platform. Floating rings of translucent stone moved slowly through the air, bearing data scrolls, artifacts, and silent observer drones. At the highest seats, 12 counselors sat in meditation. Each represented one of the Valari city-states, and each carried the weight of ancient knowledge behind eyes of molten gold. Lura inhaled slowly. Her hand brushed Elias's fingers. He squeezed gently. Then they stepped forward. "We are summoned," Lura said, her voice clear and steady. "I am Lura Vendorii, daughter of Tezhar, blood-bound to the stars. I seek to speak of what I have witnessed, what I have endured, and what I now believe." The eldest counselor, Suranatail, draped in seafoam silks, tilted her head. "You carry the echo of the forest, Lura. We have seen your message, but seeing is not always knowing. Speak." Lura stepped onto the center dais. A soft pulse of energy greeted her, attuning to her life sign. The chamber dimmed. "I was captured in the outer zones," she began. "I fled, wounded and alone. It was not my people who found me, it was him. A human. Elias March. He offered no cage, no threats, no bargains. Only a fire, warmth, and food." A flicker of movement passed through the chamber. Murmurs swirled, caught by the motionless air. "He could have abandoned me. Instead, he fought for me, against beasts, against cold, against fear. We survived together. And more than that, we healed." She turned slightly. "This human did not seek to own me. He asked no favors. He showed me what kindness means when there is no hope left." Elias stepped forward now. His throat was dry, but his voice didn't waver. "I am Elias Mar," he said, bowing slightly. "I have no title, no house. I'm a man who once served in wars he did not start. I don't come here to defend humanity. We've made mistakes. Some of us still do. But some of us." He looked at Lura. "Some of us learn. Some of us change. We survive by listening, not by conquering." Another murmur, more tense now. A silver-robed counselor leaned forward. "You offer eloquence, but what of proof? One life saved cannot undo years of mistrust." Lura stepped beside Elias. "Then let us offer more." Her fingers reached into the satchel she carried. From it, she drew a small device, cracked, but functional. She placed it gently on the pedestal at the center. It glowed. "This is from the ruins of a joint research outpost abandoned in the first border skirmishes," Lura said. "With Elias's help, we restored partial logs. Data, experiments, ideas, from both our peoples. Hope was here once. Let it be again." A counselor with eyes like sunfire nodded slowly. "And you, human? Would you serve among us, if asked? Not as warrior, but as bridge?" Elias didn't hesitate. "If there's even the chance of peace, yes." The silence that followed stretched wide and high. Then, slowly, Saranatile rose. The stars do not change their course for emotion, she said. But in rare moments, they listen. One by one, the counselors gave subtle signs, nods, gestures, shimmering flares of thought speech. Then the final one lifted his hand. The light of the chamber grew. We will allow it, Saranatile said. The council shall support a temporary alliance. Let your collaboration begin. Lura's breath caught in her throat. Elias turned, stunned, barely able to process the weight of it. Outside the chamber, a new dawn had begun. The next weeks were filled with movement. Elias was given temporary quarters within one of the floating towers, simple, but far more comfortable than anything he was used to. Lura stayed close, though her duties often pulled her to other districts. They were treated not quite as equals, but not as threats either. A curiosity. A possibility. Together, they began working with Valari scientists, opening the ruins they had mapped, sharing human tech salvage and combining it with Valari knowledge. Bioadaptive filtration systems. Harmonics-based healing fields. Communications relays that didn't rely on quantum anchors. Lura lectured to scholars about human resilience. Elias told stories of old Earth, tales of myths and mistakes, of courage and cruelty. They shared, they listened, and piece by piece, the cold wall between their species softened. Not all were pleased. Protests sparked outside the lower halls. A faction called the Cirrus Guard declared their opposition to alliance. Anonymous broadcasts claimed humans could not be trusted. But others, especially among the young, embraced the novelty. Artists painted murals of Elias and Lura standing beneath shared stars. Children asked for stories of trees and animals they'd never seen. One evening, Elias stood on the balcony of his tower quarters, the city glowing like a living constellation below. Lura joined him, a datapad in her hand, her face thoughtful. There are invitations coming in, she said. Other councils. Other species. It's begun. Elias turned to her. Do you think it'll last? She leaned against him. Nothing lasts forever. But some things are worth fighting to keep. He smiled, his arm wrapping around her waist. The wind swept softly over them, warm with the breath of distant gardens. Above, the stars did not speak. But perhaps, just perhaps, they watched. And listened. The stars shimmered like river stones cast across a velvet sky. From the high balcony of the Valari capital's central spire, the view was nothing short of breathtaking. The air was crisp, tinged with the soft scent of blooming lightsong vines that curled along the railings. Lanterns bobbed gently in the breeze, illuminating the swirling silks and metallic threads of the evening's gathering. Lura stood near the edge, her deep violet eyes scanning the horizon where the towers met the heavens. Her blue skin glowed in the ambient light, and the ceremonial robe she wore clung to her slender frame like dusk clings to twilight. She had never imagined returning to the capital like this. Behind her, the murmurs of the summit filled the circular hall. Delegates from across the galaxy, Valari, humans, the Karani with their verdant scales, the crystalline-bodied Eurythians, gathered in clusters beneath the banner of the newly formed Accord of Shadows and Light. This summit was not a negotiation, it was a reckoning, a retelling, and perhaps the beginning of something fragile but radiant. Elias stepped up beside her. The human's dark coat was tailored with Valari etching at the seams, a mark of respect that had been granted just days ago by the artisan ward. His once wild beard had been trimmed, but his eyes still held the stormy calm of someone who had survived too much and given too much to be anything but real. "You ready?" he asked, his voice quiet. Lura smiled faintly. "As ready as I can be. It's not every day you confess your soul to the galaxy." They walked together toward the central dais, carved from a single slab of star metal. When they reached it, the light dimmed and the voices fell to a hush. The high listener of the Valari Council, robed in iridescent gray, stepped forward and raised one hand. "On this day," he intoned, we open our hearts not with judgment, but with understanding. The path we walk now is neither easy nor familiar. But it is necessary. He turned and gestured for Lura to speak. Her steps echoed faintly on the platform. As she stood at the center, thousands of eyes watched her, some curious, others cautious, and a few with unguarded admiration. Her gaze swept over the assembly, pausing briefly on the Valari warborn she once commanded, then on the delegates of Earth's scattered colonies. I was taken, she began, her voice smooth but weighted, in what was meant to be a simple patrol. Our ship was struck by unknown interference. We crashed, and I was the only survivor, injured and stranded in the forests of New Terrace 7. There was a soft shift of attention across the floor. I believed I would die. And I would have, she continued, if not for a human. Elias March. A murmur rose, not of suspicion, but surprise. He took me in. Not as a trophy. Not as leverage. As someone worth saving. She paused, letting the memory pass like a warm breath through her. I was angry. I distrusted him. And still, he gave me warmth, safety, time. We hid together, fled together, survived together. We cared for a child who was lost and alone. And in that forest, I learned something I had never seen in any council hall or war room. I learned trust. Silence settled again. A stillness thick with emotion. I am Valari. My people are proud, powerful. But I would be dead if not for him. And more than that, I would still be blind. Her voice trembled. He showed me that unity is not forged through treaties alone, but through kindness. Through choosing to see one another. She stepped back. Her hands trembled, but her spine remained straight. Then Elias took her place. He cleared his throat once. No notes. No fancy words. My name is Elias March. I used to be a soldier. Then I stopped being anything at all, for a while. I ran from the world, buried myself in silence. And then Lura fell from the sky. Some laughed gently. Others leaned closer. She terrified me. She was everything I didn't understand. But she was also in pain, and I couldn't just leave her. His voice grew firmer. I've done terrible things in my life. But saving her wasn't one of them. I didn't plan to fall in love. But you don't plan to breathe when you're drowning. It just happens. Lura's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't told her he'd say that. Her chest fluttered, as if the sky itself had opened within her. I'm not here to tell you that humans are perfect, Elias continued. We're not. We're messy, loud, stubborn. But so is every species in this room. What makes us worth knowing is that we keep trying. Even when we fail, we get up. Even when we hurt, we still reach out. There was no applause. Not yet. Only stillness. And then. From the Eurythian delegate, a nod. From the Karani, a chitter of approval. The Valari warborn who had once called Elias feral, now touched two fingers to their forehead, a gesture of respect. It began to ripple outward. The high listener stepped forward again. The council shall convene for the final accord. But I speak now as one of the old line. What I witnessed here tonight, was not a speech. It was truth. And it is time we let truth guide us. The summit recessed into private chambers. And while the official agreements would take days to finalize, something irreversible had happened, trust had taken root. That night, under a sky freckled with constellations new and ancient, Lura and Elias returned to the balcony. Do you think they'll actually listen? She asked. They already are, he said. It starts with one person choosing to see another. Then another. Then a world. The lights of the Valari capital flickered below like fireflies in a dream. Lura leaned against his side, her hand finding his. When I first met you, I wanted to kill you. I remember, Elias said with a dry chuckle. You tried. And now? He turned to her. Now I just want to keep building whatever this is. With you. She looked up at the stars. Then let's build something worth remembering. Their hands tightened. The stars above didn't answer, but they didn't need to. A new sky had already begun to form. And beneath it, two hearts, once broken, now beat in quiet harmony, daring to shape a future neither of them had ever dreamed possible.